Peace, y'all. Even though I don't mean it to, I
look very witchy and menacing today.
But I'm not. Well, witchy, yes, but menacing, no. I'm only menacing if I must be. Otherwise, I'm quite a gentle, kind, and loving spirit. But I feel the true definition of extreme dark and light, because I am very extreme on both aspects. I'm either happy or I'm not happy. I'm either passionately joyful or I'm passionately unjoyful. I'm either loving or I will fucking kill you. It's just like, I'm very yin and yang. Something that I noticed about myself. I've learned about myself over these years. So, peace, peace, peace. Welcome to this video. I have been feeling called to do and say some things for quite some time that I have been keeping to myself. And so I feel like see, here's with me as I will put out a few videos of something, and sometimes I lose hope. Is that the word I'm looking for? It's not that I lose interest, because I continue to do these things in my own life. It's more that I lose like gosh, I can't think of any other word but hope, but I don't feel like hope is quite the word I'm looking for. So if you know what word I'm looking for, put it in the comments, because I would love to hear someone. It came to someone. I know it did. It always does. So, yeah, I start to lose like that. Well, maybe my ear is ringing. My left ear. I start to lose that. And I don't want to do that. I want to continue to share with everyone the gifts that I've been given, because we've all been given gifts. You have gifts as well. You know, we each have a gift, well, multiple gifts that allow us certain, I don't know, intricacies and access to certain things in this earthly physical plane. You know, for myself, I know many of my gifts. I probably don't know all of them, and I know I definitely haven't reached the peak of their prime. That's for sure. So I continue to practice them on my own, but I would like to continue to also share with you guys the things that I was gifted, because I was gifted these things not to keep just for me, yes. And also to, you know, help me figure out what to do in my life, but it wasn't meant just for me. We're a collective. It was meant for me to share, you know, it was meant for me to help others with. And so are your gifts. So if you don't already know what your gifts are, just begin to watch yourself and the things that you have interest in, and the things that you find that you are good at. Be honest with yourself. You don't have to be so, what people call humble, which is not what humble really means, but what people call humble, you don't have to be that. You don't have to diminish yourself or belittle yourself or bring yourself to I'm not good at that level. Don't do that. As a matter of fact, do the opposite of that. Revel in that. Celebrate that. Honor that. Cherish that. Embody that. You know, when you find that you have gifts, share them. When you feel comfortable. When you feel called to. And I don't necessarily feel comfortable always to share the things that I share, because it's vulnerable, you know. We have to expose things of ourselves. We have to expose ourselves. And I'm a very, like, empathetic and compassionate and passionate person. So, like, sometimes things make me want to cry. And even just now, I've said a couple things already that I felt a choke up in my throat. And it's like, what if I cry on camera? Oh my God. Wouldn't that be embarrassing, right? Sometimes maybe so, but then there are also times that it's like maybe those tears were needed. Of course, then we could say that maybe all the times the tears were needed because they're not necessarily for me, although they help me to release energy and bottled up emotion. They aren't necessarily, maybe sometimes what I'm trying to say is that sometimes I think that you need to see the tears because it shows you that it's okay to cry. It's normal. It's okay to release emotion and that tension that you're holding, the blockage, whatever happens to be sitting there that needed to be released. Who knows? It's different for everyone and it's different each time, for even us. So then there's that side of it. It's always a flip side to the coin, right? Because in one aspect, that's my own fear of being seen in a vulnerable state. Because somehow we have been conditioned and programmed to think that crying is weak. It's a sign of weakness, right? So I would, of course, never want to be seen as weak or, I can't show emotion and weakness in this manner. What is disgusting? But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not weakness. What the fuck is weak about energy and about motion, about emotion, energy in motion? What is weak about energy in motion? First of all, nothing about energy is weak. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. So if energy was weak, then rocks wouldn't be solid, strong material. You see what I'm saying? Energy is not weak. Emotions are not weak. Emotions are also not inherently gendered. They're not feminine nor masculine. Well, if you want to break it down, everything is feminine. Everything begins as feminine. So everything comes from the feminine and has feminine within it. So, but that's not what emotions are not necessarily weak nor masculine. They're not either thing. They're human. How humans express energy that is inside of them. And sometimes that energy is sadness. Sometimes that energy is things that we don't even know what we're feeling, because it could be from a childhood wound or trauma that you don't even remember. We don't just begin getting traumas from the moment that we remember in life. Like, we don't just start being traumatized at 3 or whatever, like that's not how it works. Trauma begins from the time that you are conceived. Even inside the womb, you can be subjected to trauma. Energy. You have to think about energy and how does energy work and really what is energy, Think about that for a moment when you think about a baby inside of their mother's body, and even just the conception, the very, very beginning, when it's just a little zygote, a little blob mass of energy. That mass is affected by its environment. It's affected by everything around it. And everything around it is energy. Energy can penetrate any substance. Everything is made of energy. So energy literally can go through energy. That would be like saying that the wind can't go through the air. You see what I'm saying? So energy can definitely penetrate the mother's skin, her muscles, the womb, and straight into the mass that is forming into you. or a child, whatever you want to, whomever you'd like to put into the scenario, that energy is affecting that mass as it grows, as it develops into a human body, and a soul is placed into it. But the body, before the soul is placed into it even, has already undergone, or potentially undergone, forms of trauma. Imagine if the mom gets upset, something happens. We don't have to blame fathers. It's not always the dad that causes trauma on the mother, okay? The mom could be traumatized by her boss. The mom could be traumatized by a ride on a public bus and something terrible happens, or something she witnessed happen across the street. Something she saw on TV, something that happened on the other side of the fucking world. These things affect the mother, and she releases hormones, energy. She releases energy. She absorbs energy. She's creating energy and also creating the baby that is energy. So all of those things are being combined. And that is the beginning of trauma. The beginning of trauma, well, actually, come on now, if y'all really want to get deep, I'm Melody Waters for a reason, because I'm a deep diver and I do go deep. So if you really wanna take it back, trauma begins since the beginning, because every single woman carries all of her eggs from the time of conception. So for example, your mother, the egg that formed her, was inside your grandmother's womb when she was inside your great-grandmother's womb. But that goes all the way back, and it's always going to be interconnected to the next 2 generations. Actually, I take that back. Yeah, 2 generations. Because the mother who's pregnant, the child inside, and if that child stays feminine, then that child will form eggs and carry the eggs from the womb. So that is 3 generations right now inside one mother. That's 3 generations inside one mother. The mother carrying the child, and should that child stay feminine, that child carrying eggs. So myself, because I'm a woman, I will use myself. Any trauma, oh man, this is insane. Any trauma my grandmother endured, I endured. But here's what's crazy. My grandmother endured anything her mom endured and her great-grandma endured. Which means what? What is that telling you? My it keeps going back, because everything that affected my great-great-grandmother affected my great-grandmother and affected my grandmother, right? Which means that it also affected every egg that my grandmother carried. So then it affected every child that my grandmother had. And every woman every feminine energy my grandmother brought onto this earth, it affected them and their offspring and their offspring. Because every child I carried, every egg that I have, is affected by what affected my mother and my grandmother. But my grandmother was affected by her mother and her grandmother, who was affected by do you see? So when we are healing traumas, sometimes we're carrying traumas within us that go back generation upon generation upon upon. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we're talking about like forever in generations. The interconnectedness is wild when you think about it. And that, my friend, is where trauma really begins. The deep dive. That's where trauma begins. Trauma begins at the beginning. From the very beginning. Trauma has been. So trauma begins at the very beginning. So it's important for us to cry. Let it out. Let the tears flow. Because you may or may not even know what stagnant energy you are putting into motion. But I will tell you that regardless of what energy that is, if it's stagnant, it's harming your body that carries you on this earth, in this physical plane. And that body is important. First and foremost, we should always want to return things as good or in better condition in which we received them, correct? Because when we borrow something from someone, do we not want to return that item in as good of condition or better than it was given to us? Of course we do. This body that carries you, it's not yours. I mean, it's loaned to you. We borrow this energy. We get to use it, gratitude, to be in this physical plane, to maneuver this physical plane. Because you get to do things simply because you're inside this body that you would not get to do if you didn't have the same physical anchoring, so to speak. So those blocked up energies are harmful to this body. It creates dis-ease. It creates disruption, dis-ease, anything that's not ease anymore, ailments of the sorts, things that people like to claim for themselves, the big C word and, all of this stuff, heart attacks, depression, anxiety, all of these things are caused by blockages, by motion that is not allowed motion, by energy that is not allowed motion. And that is the true, that's the true healer, is allowing ourselves the space and the safety to unblock these things, to just get through it, feel that, whatever that emotion is, to allow it to be felt, to allow it to be acknowledged, to allow its presence to be seen, to allow it to be heard, because that is what these traumas need. The trauma needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be seen, it needs to be heard. And once it's acknowledged, it's seen, it's heard, it can be then dealt with. Because then 1911 on the clock, if you know me, you know, then it can be dealt with in a manner in which you are able to have release, for a better terminology, for lack of better terminology. That release allows you to change. It allows you, the more you release these things, the more you unblock these energies and put them into motion again, the more you change your view in the world, the more your perspective shifts, and you really start to see things differently. You really start to, I don't even know, what am I trying to say here? You start to have compassion. I think you really start to have compassion for the world when you yourself can see beyond maybe what that person is saying into what they're not saying. And once you begin to heal yourself, you stop hearing and seeing everything through a lens of trauma. And you start to see that, damn, I went through all this shit in my life. If I went through all this and it affected me in these manners, imagine people who went through the same thing, or imagine that people who went through different experiences might also react in a way that I have. And this is where we get to utilize things like triggers. You know, when something triggers you, typically we look at a trigger as like, oh no, I'm triggered, I'm angry, I can't take this anymore. I can't take this anymore. And we just want to wash and throw it all away, right? Just fuck everything. Just fuck it. Just burn down the world because something simple triggered us. And I used to be guilty of the same thing. So I can fully understand and have compassion for this behavior, because it's not you. It's you with a blanket of trauma on yourself. You're seeing the world through the eyes of the trauma, not through the eyes of whom you really are. Who you really are is going to be a different person. Trauma will have a lot of control over somebody's life until they choose to not allow it the control anymore. Speaking from experience, of someone who, of the traumas that I know I experienced in my life, 22 on the clock, were difficult traumas. And that's what I know of. Imagine all the things that I've forgotten or shoved away or don't know of because it was before I was even born. You know? For example, my grandfather and grandmother, mostly my grandfather, but my grandparents, my grandfather was extremely abusive. Extremely abusive. He abused my grandmother. He abused all of the children. He was very abusive. He was an alcoholic. He was a drunk because he just drank all the time. He never got help. Matter of fact, my grandfather's last day before he ended up in the hospital and then died shortly after, he was at the bar that, like Cheers, everybody knew his motherfucking name. My grandfather had his tongue removed, or part of it, and still chose to drink and smoke cigarettes and just all the things that were killing him. So abuse in my body, trauma, my body, not my soul, not me, but the body that carries me. Abuse is something that this body has endured from what I know, at least since my grandmother. So inside my mother's womb, my mom endured abuse. Inside my grandmother's womb, did I say that? I don't know what I just said, but inside my grandmother's womb, my mom endured abuse. And inside my mother's womb, I endured abuse inside my grandma's womb. Inside my grandmother's womb, inside my mother's womb, the egg that created me endured and created my body. Let me be conscious of what I'm saying. The egg that my body came from, that created my body, endured abuse. So when you go back and heal these traumas, you're healing trauma from more than just what you know of. And so from the things that I know of, the abuse that I endured in my own actual physical life inside this avatar was a lot. And so I'm a product of someone who chose to heal. And now I come from an era where we weren't taught this like healing thing and like trauma. Yeah, go tell one of your parents. If you're from my generation, I'm Gen X. If you're Gen X, go tell your parents. Go tell your grandparents that you're depressed when you were a kid. Nowadays, your grandparents and your parents might have a different outlook on things because some of that has become less taboo and a little more widely accepted. But when you were a kid, let's go back. Tell your parents that you were depressed. Tell your grandparents that you were depressed. Tell them these things. Tell them that you think you have trauma. Tell them that you're healing. Go ahead. It's one of those things that they'd have been like, you're depressed. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Just go sit down somewhere. Go take a nap. Go drink some ginger ale. Like, we would have been, Vicks Vapor Rub would have been applied. Like, there would have been no give a fucks. That's for sure. But nowadays, it's a totally different type of scenario. And we're able to, thank goodness, we're able to acknowledge these things and begin these healing processes. Because for so many generations, we have been not. And so I'm being harassed. I think this dog needs to go outside. Give me a moment, please, darling. I shall return in a moment. Okay, I'm back. Gratitude. So, it's funny too, because when I went down and let my dog outside, I was thinking about something, and it actually brought me to like another revelation to share with you. And that is that talking about crying and releasing these energies and like, you know, allowing these traumas to be acknowledged, felt, seen, heard, so that they can go away. Like, that's the whole point. And I was thinking about something like, you know, a lot of times we try to just cover the symptoms. So like, example, depression and anxiety, those are not mental illnesses. Don't get me wrong. Some people, they claim that they have a lower hormonal level of certain hormones like oxytocin or things of that nature, right? But why? Because our body naturally produces these things. So if there's lack of them, then there's something going on inside that person, right? And the antidepressant, serotonin is another one. The antidepressant is not something that is going to create, or let me recant that for a second, or backtrack with that. The antidepressant is not going to allow the body to create more serotonin in a natural way. What those drugs do is they force synthetic serotonin. Like, it is serotonin. They're giving you serotonin, synthetic serotonin though. And so it's not your body producing it. It's now the body being fed it. And when the body begins to be fed something that's just covering the symptoms, sure, the symptoms get covered up, right? The person stops feeling depressed. Sadly, a lot of times with antidepressants, that person not only stops feeling depressed, but they stop feeling any motherfucking thing. So that's not good either. And again, I have experience in this. This is not just me talking. And I know multiple people who have also had the same types of experiences. Like, I know people and I've seen of people. Like, you could just go on the internet right now and you could find gazillions of stories. I mean, I'm making up that number. I'm exaggerating, but you can find a multitude of stories of people who have experienced these same things, where they feel like a zombie and have no emotion, as opposed to just being sad all the time, which neither is good. And those medications are not designed to help you heal whatever it is that is creating this lack of serotonin. They're not designed to help you figure out why you have anxiety or to actually heal the source of the anxiety. No, they are designed to cover the symptoms. And just because we cover the symptoms and the symptoms go away doesn't mean that we have fixed or healed the source. So as soon as you stop taking that medication, if we're going to call it medicine, them drugs, as soon as you stop taking them drugs, the symptoms return. Why? Because you never got to the root. You never got to the source. There is no medication inside the medical industry that is healing or curing anyone. If they were healed or cured, they would not need to take the medication anymore. They wouldn't need to take the drugs. But instead, what these drugs do is they lead to more drugs. So they put somebody on antidepressant. Then they're putting somebody on an anti-anxiety or barbiturates. They're putting people on things like Xanax and shit like that, right? And the body becomes addicted to these substances. And they're not healing the source. So if the person is taking the drugs, but they're doing no inner work, they're not healing anything, they're not fixing anything, that isn't going to help them. Ultimately, then, they just become dependent and reliant on the drug to keep the symptoms away. But they never ever get to the root, the source, the actual reason why they're depressed, why their body lacks serotonin, why they have anxiety, or why they experience anxiety. Now, instead, if we do this inner work, if we choose to face these traumas, or even just express and relieve these traumas when they come up, via crying, via going for a run, via, screaming in a pillow, via punching on a punching bag, everybody is going to experience these things a little bit different. And some people might want to sleep some of it off, and sometimes that's okay too. You may also be a dreamer if that's the case, and in that instance, pay attention to your dreams. But we still ultimately, at the end of the day, we got to do the work. And the work is what? The work is acknowledging these feelings, acknowledging these emotions, acknowledging any messages that come to us, or any things that are experiences, events that are coming to us that are telling us, like, I just realized this is loud as heck. I can close my window because it is like cold there. As you see, I'm in my blanket. He's like,
I'm cold with my hood up. I'm cold. It's freezing in here.
So acknowledging these traumas and working through these traumas, sometimes you're going to know what it is. Sometimes it's going to be like, oh, I remember that one time when I was, 7 years old and we were playing and this happened and that happened and da-da-da. And, my friend did this, or my dad said that, or my mom did this, or my grandfather, but fill in the blank. You see what I'm saying? We've all had some crazy ass experiences. And so some of these things you're gonna know, you're gonna remember, it's gonna come to you. And you can ask your body, this is how I got rid of my anxiety. This is how I got rid of my depression. Now, do I sometimes have a moment where I feel sadness in my energy field? I mean, yeah, what the fuck? Do you see where the fuck we are? What the fuck? You see what we're doing? Does anybody even know what we're doing? Like, yo. So there's that. But but ultimately, if I get a twinge of feeling anxious, I'm paying attention to that because that means something to me now. Before it's how I woke up. I wake up in the morning with my stomach in knots, feeling like I just wanted to bleh, just yak everywhere. I felt horrible. Couldn't breathe, chest tight. Heart feels like it's racing, mind racing. Body can't sit still but doesn't want to do anything. Yo, yeah, your girl been there too, okay? I have definitely been there. But I'll tell you what, the inner work, the acknowledging those feelings, the sitting with those feelings, the asking those feelings why they feel. Why are you here? Asking your body, why do you feel anxious right now? What's going on? Be aware of your breath. You got to sit with yourself and in this stillness and become aware of these things. Because see, when you become aware of these things and you have these conversations with yourself, you can then acknowledge the trauma, give it its voice, let it speak, let it be seen, let it be acknowledged, let it be heard. Well, I felt this way when this happened, and I was sad and I was scared, and you weren't there and you didn't help me. Not you, but nobody came there. Nobody helped me. This person I was trusted, they did this to me, and I felt betrayed. And you know, that's what it needs. It needs to say that. It needs to speak its truth. Let it do that. Let the memory come back. Hell yeah, it's gonna hurt. Let the memory come back, because then you have the chance to go back into that moment with that younger version of yourself, or the last week version of yourself, whenever it was. You go into that version, you go back to that version of yourself, and you have a conversation with yourself. I know this hurt you. You know, I apologize that you had to go through that and experience that, and that must have been scary. I love you. And you know, yes, that person should have stood up for you. You know, you got to talk to that version of self that endured that shit. And then you give them a hug. And guess who gets the hug? Give them a hug. I love you. I love you. And you're safe now. And I won't allow that to happen to you. I will protect you. And then also, when you get to this point, because you know what, you might not be able to do it right away, and that's O-fucking-K. You know why? Because we all have our own process and path in which we have to do this. We get to do this. We all have our own process and path in which we get to do this healing. And I say we get to because that's being mindful of my words, and also we get to do this. And although it may have its challenges at times, and it may sometimes seem like it's challenging. It may have challenges sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's worth it, because you got to heal. And that changes everything. It changes everything in your life. Give me 1 second. I'm going to be right back, because he came in. So I'm going to go shut that door. So something magical happens when you start allowing that energy to be felt and seen and heard. And you begin to see where these things are coming from. Once you see where they're coming from, then you can start to give those things like that love and acknowledgement, right? And what happens is you start to not be as triggered by them anymore. Because ultimately, this is where our triggers come from. You know, somebody says something, and the only reason why you're upset is because it hits home to some degree. Because if it didn't hit home to some degree, if you didn't resonate with that on some level, you wouldn't give a fuck. Why would you give a fuck if you didn't resonate with that on some level, right? So anytime something triggers us, we have to go and analyze why it is we feel that trigger. And this is like anxiety is a trigger. Depression, that's a trigger. It might not be a trigger that makes you angry, but that's not the only way to be triggered. Somebody could say something and you start crying. That's a trigger. Why are you emotional behind that? These are the things that we get to start analyzing within ourselves. And this is where we get our breakthroughs. This is where we get our aha moments. This is where we get our inner standing of self, and then our compassion for others. Because you start to look at self and be like, oh my God, no wonder why I yell whenever I'm upset. Well, my entire childhood, I got yelled at all the time. Like, anytime my parents were upset, what did they do? Yell. So, of course, when I'm upset, I'm gonna yell. It's what I know. It's what I was taught. It's what I've seen. And guess what? Going all the way back to the analogy with grandma and how trauma began from the beginning. Imagine my grandmother was abused by her husband. My grandmother was abused by her husband, like physically abused by her husband. I'm sure she heard yelling. So that goes all the way back. And then who knows what my grandmother endured. I have no idea anyone beyond my grandmother. I don't know any of my other family beyond my grandmother. I don't know my great-grandma. I don't know my great-great-grandma. I don't know stories of their lives like that. My family wasn't that close. They didn't really tell those types of stories. I don't know those things about my life, about my family, about what my past grandparents and my ancestors have endured in that aspect. You know? So there's a lot to be said for just giving these things that acknowledgement, and then the love, and then the compassion. And the compassion for yourself and what you've endured. When you start showing yourself love and you start showing yourself compassion for the things that you've endured, you will begin to have that same love and compassion for other people. And the more that you are able to heal things within yourself, when triggers get popped up, the less you're going to get triggered. Because that's the cool thing, is something that someone said that triggered you one time, it doesn't mean it's going to trigger you forever. Because when you become self-aware to where you can acknowledge that, yo, when he said that, it triggered the fuck out of me. Why? What about what he said made me feel triggered? He wasn't talking to me or about me. But yet for some reason, I took offense to that. I took that to heart. I took that personal. Great book. If you like to read, I'm a reader. I love to read. You guys are propped up on a book right now. I have an entire library. I fucking love books. So, a really great book, and actually any book by this gentleman or his son, Don Miguel Ruiz, or Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., is a phenomenal book. But there's one in particular that I was going to mention, and it was the first book I ever read of his, Don Miguel Ruiz. The book's called The Four Agreements, and I love this book. And one of the agreements is don't take anything personal. And he explains in this book, well, about all the agreements, but let's talk about this don't take anything personal one. That agreement is a little bit like what I just explained to you. Actually, a lot bit like what I just explained to you. in the fact that other people speak and have opinions, like even how they feel about you. Who gives a fuck how they feel about you? Because how they feel about you or what they say about you is a direct reflection of themselves, their opinions, their experiences, their traumas, all of it, right? That all comes directly from them. It has nothing to do with you, ultimately, at the end of the day. So same with these traumas. It's a very similar thing where it's like, don't take that personal. Instead, take that trigger and use it as a learning moment. Okay, you felt triggered. Okay. It wasn't even about you though. Even if they said it about you or to you, it wasn't about you. You see what I'm saying? So take that and be like, okay, why did that trigger me? Because it's going to be something within yourself. Either some way you feel about yourself, something that you feel like you should be doing. I know for myself, I'm going to give you an example because maybe this will help you. For example, I noticed about myself a while back that I get like a little trigger where I feel some type of way. That's the only way I know how to describe it. Because it's not hate. It's not jealousy. It's not like, I don't wish bad. I want everyone to win. I want everyone to win. So it's not one of those things. It's more of like, this is my energy's way of letting me know, like, girl, get on your shit. Okay? Because I will feel triggered when I see someone post about something that I do, but I'm obviously not on my shit about. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it reminds me, you know why? I'm going to tell you why it triggers me, because I figured out why it triggers me. So I can tell you why it triggers me. It reminds me that I'm not on my shit. When I see someone else post something, I'm like, I do that. And then I'm like, well, I do that too. And then I'm like, oh, you know why you feel triggered? Because you haven't posted about that your damn self. You haven't put any energy into that yourself for your own shit. So you're reminded, and we call it a trigger because I guess that's how we're going to label the energy. But in all reality, it's a reminder. It's a kick in the ass, a kick in the pants. It's a kick in the ass. Ma'am, are you forgetting something? I feel triggered by that because I'm not giving that thing the attention I feel I should be. See how what they posted and my reaction, my feelings had nothing to do with one another? They were posting what they loved to post. They were posting for themselves, for their own purposes. You see what I'm saying? It had nothing to do with me. I was the one who got triggered. And I got triggered due to my own shit. I got triggered because I know that I'm supposed to be doing more. Or that I feel, anyways, that's my own pressures and whatever that I'm putting on myself, right? Nobody else. So I feel like I should be doing more. So therefore, I'm triggered by somebody who is in fact doing what probably to me looks like the more. You see? Y'all, this is how triggers work. Excuse me, I need a drink. But this is how triggers work. You may be experiencing a trigger because it is one of my I would consider him to be, he probably would not agree, but I would consider him to be someone who has mentored me and taught me a lot. Zoe Williams, wonderful, amazing, phenomenal human, from what I know of him anyways. And I feel that I've been watching this man for long enough to know that I can say that about him. I've been watching this man since about 2016, and gosh, 9 years now of watching his videos and watching his shows that he does. He's great. So if you are looking for someone who will check you and put you in your place other than me. Zoe Williams, man, go look him up. He's on the YouTubes. Zoe Williams. You can find him everywhere. He does a show called The Voice of Reason. And it's Monday through Thursdays. If you're in Central Standard Time, it starts at 9 p.m. I'm Central Standard Time, so it starts at 9 p.m. where I live. And he always says that shit, I lost what I was gonna say. I got all into how excited I was about Zoe. I forgot to tell you. I forgot what I was even talking about. It'll come back to me. Anyways, the point is acknowledging these emotions, giving them space to be seen and felt and heard. That allows us to just change our perspective on life and to have compassion for other people. In the compassion that we find for ourselves, we will find compassion for others as well. And in that, we start to look at other people in the world very differently. Like I was saying, if you can see how you would react to a certain situation, you start to see in other people the way that they react, you begin to be like, oh, well, that person clearly has unresolved traumas, have unhealed traumas. That person is clearly experiencing right now a trigger moment. And those trigger moments, though, they're a blessing. They're a blessing in disguise, because those trigger moments allow you to really just analyze yourself. If you're going to be honest with yourself, and that's the best way. It really is, because, if you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with anybody, and you won't. Be real. Look, you ain't got to be real with me, but be real with your motherfucking self, okay? Because at the end of the day, if you cannot be real with you, you won't and can't be real with anyone else. I don't think it's possible. You might sometimes be real with them, but you're gonna not sometimes too. Just like however you do yourself is how you're gonna do them too. Everything that we are to other people is a reflection of what we are to ourselves. How we treat other people, how we perceive other people, ultimately is in some way, shape, or form how we perceive or reflect things about ourselves. Not necessarily the exact things, but for example, I don't know, I have an example at the top of my head, but you definitely will reflect. If you're angry one day and you're having a shitty day or a shitty moment, and it just seems like, oh, this thing happened and then that thing happened, and it's just one thing after another, right? You're, first of all, continuing to attract that into your life by saying things like, oh, it's one thing after another. Oh, this keeps happening. Or, oh my, this is a horrible day. If you say things like that, cancel that. You don't consent. My day is fabulous and wonderful and glorious and beautiful in every aspect. Then you will begin to attract that. You will continue to attract that into your life. And then also, you will see everything that way. So someone might be looking at you and like looking at your outfit and like smile, and you will look at that person and be like, what the fuck are you looking at? Again, I know because I've done this. What the fuck are you looking at is what that person thinks, right? But in the other person's mind, the one who was smiling, that person was like, oh my God, she's so pretty. I love her outfit. But your ass was triggered because of your own experiences throughout the day, right? What was going on in your perceived experiences, your perception of those experiences, So these things are all how we can begin to shift our perspective and get rid of things like anxiety, depression, start to heal these traumas, start to become a whole new person, a whole new person. You really will. You really will. I swear. I cannot attest enough to the changes that happen in your life and how you feel. If nothing else, the true like peace that you're able to feel it's amazing. It's the opposite of how loud these guys are with their mowing. I did open this back up. That was my bad. So with the perceived feelings, the perspection that you're having at the moment, it is like a perspection, I guess. Your perception and your perspective at once. Your perspection. You would change the way you think, the way you feel. You would change everything about yourself. And it's like the more you start to love yourself, the more you love yourself, and the less you want to harm yourself, the less you want to, harm yourself, the less you want to harm others, and the less you want to harm the earth, the less you want to harm nature. It's a beautiful domino effect. It's a beautiful domino effect. It's actually something that is, it's like and then I get excited, and then people around you, the people that are left, once you start healing, forewarning, a lot of people are probably going to be leaving your life, and either by their own choice or by yours, but let them go. Let them go. Even if it comes to the point that it's just you, it's okay. Let them all go. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you find yourself. And when you find yourself, you realize that you are not... Hang on, I'm going to close this window too. God. It doesn't help that I'm kind of like an anti-grass mowing kind of person anyways. I'm so like, stop killing the grass! They act like everything is a weed, but a lot of things that are perceived as weeds or called weeds are in fact medicine, real medicine, not these drugs that the medical industry will have you believe is medicine. The real stuff though. So look at, there I go again. Y'all, I experience symptoms of neurodivergency and autism. Neurodivergency, as some may call it, ADHD. So my train derails very easily, okay? I do apologize. What was I talking about? And then I'm not live, so like you guys can't just tell me what it was I was talking about. And I don't want to keep looping back on you. I apologize, friends. So like what had happened was perceived emotions. Is that what we were talking about? Perceived perception, perspection. Dang it.